Welcome back. In the last video in this course about Ikigai, we talked about golden handcuffs and the invisible maps of success that many of us follow without realizing it. You started to see how much of your life may have been guided by shoulds that came from other people, from culture, or from an earlier version of you. Today, I want to flip the script on something else that's very common, the idea that if you haven't got your life completely figured out by your 20s or early 30s, you've somehow missed the window. That belief quietly haunts a lot of people, especially when they start to wonder if they're on the wrong path. You can almost hear the voice saying, "It's too late. I've invested too much. I can't change now." This video is about dismantling that belief and replacing it with a much more useful one. That midlife, or wherever you are right now, is not a crisis point by definition. It's leverage. It's a moment in time where you actually have more tools, more clarity, and more power than you used to, even if it doesn't always feel that way. Let's start with a simple observation. When you were in your early 20s, how much did you really know about how you would feel in your 40s or 50s? Back then, you probably made decisions based on the information and role models you had at the time. Maybe you chose a field that seemed safe or respectable. Maybe you grabbed the first good job offer that came your way. Maybe you followed a passion without really understanding how it would play out over the long term. That's normal. We all set off with limited information. But life doesn't stop in its tracks just because you've passed a certain birthday. You learn, you change, you collect experiences, good and bad, that teach you a lot about what actually works for you and what doesn't. So when people talk about a midlife crisis, what they are often describing is not a crisis of age. It's a crisis of alignment. It's the gap between the life you built based on who you were and what you believed back then, and the person you have become now. If you're feeling that, I want you to hear something clearly. The fact that you are noticing the mismatch is not a sign of failure. It's a sign that you're awake. And the age you are now gives you three powerful kinds of leverage that you probably didn't have when you first started out. The first kind of leverage is experience. Over the years, you've accumulated a huge amount of invisible data. You know what kinds of environments you do well in and what kinds drain you. You've seen projects succeed and fail. You've dealt with people, conflicts, deadlines, messes, and victories. You've learned, whether you realize it or not, how you personally respond to stress, to responsibility, to praise, to criticism. This experience gives you pattern recognition. You can look at a new role, a new opportunity, or a new idea and say, "I've seen something like this before. Here's what tends to happen when I walk down this path." That is incredibly valuable when you're trying to design a new chapter of your life. It means you're not guessing in the dark the way you once were. You have evidence about what fits you and what doesn't. Think about Sarah again. When she first chose accounting, she didn't know that sitting in traditional corporate structures, doing mostly compliance work, would eventually feel suffocating. She just knew it was a respectable, useful profession. Years later, she had enough lived experience to notice a pattern. She felt most alive when she was helping people understand their finances, not when she was buried in internal spreadsheets for big firms. Her experience gave her a more accurate picture of what work that fits might look like. The second kind of leverage is capital. I'm not just talking about money, although that can be part of it. I'm talking about all the assets you've built up over time. Your skills, your relationships, your reputation, your knowledge of how your industry or your craft works. When you were younger, you might have had more theoretical freedom, but very little actual capital. If you wanted to change direction, you were starting almost from zero. Now you've built things, you've proven you can show up, deliver, handle responsibility. People know you. You probably have a better financial base than you did at the beginning. This doesn't mean you're automatically wealthy or that risk disappears, but it does mean you're not starting from scratch. You have career capital, what the book calls the skills, networks, and credibility you can redeploy into new contexts. Think about David in retirement. He didn't decide to build a completely unrelated identity from nothing. He used his decades of engineering experience to become valuable in his community, advising on safety, infrastructure, and practical improvements to shared spaces. All those years of work didn't vanish when he left his job. They turned into capital he could use in new ways. The third kind of leverage is urgency. At first, that might not sound like a good thing. You might think, I don't want to feel time pressure. But the kind of urgency we're talking about here isn't panic or fear. It's clarity about the fact that your time is finite, and that how you spend the next 5, 10, or 20 years really matters. In your 20s, it's easy to believe you have unlimited time to figure things out. You can drift. You can tell yourself, one day I'll do something that really matters to me, and it doesn't feel costly. At a certain point, that changes. You start to feel that the years are not all the same. That realization, if you don't run from it, can sharpen your focus. It can help you get very honest about what is worth your time and what isn't. Urgency in this sense becomes a filter. You become less willing to trade your days for things that don't matter to you. You become more willing to have difficult conversations, to set boundaries, to say no to opportunities that would have impressed other people but don't feel meaningful to you. That's not a crisis, that's maturity. I want you to imagine, just for a moment, that instead of seeing your age as a limitation, you saw it as a portfolio. You've been investing in this portfolio for years. You've put in countless hours of effort. You've made mistakes and learned from them. You've improved certain skills. You've developed a deeper understanding of yourself and of the world. You've built relationships, even if some of them have changed over time. What if the question now isn't, am I too late? But rather, given everything I've invested and learned, what do I want to do with this portfolio from this point forward? That's a very different mindset. It acknowledges that the past matters, not as a chain holding you back, but as a resource you can draw on. Of course, this doesn't mean you throw caution to the wind. Responsibility still matters. Bills still need to be paid. Other people may depend on you. This is why the idea of leverage is so important. You're not being asked to jump blindly. You're being invited to use your experience, your capital, and your urgency to design smart experiments, small, manageable steps toward a more aligned life. We'll talk more about experiments later in the course, but here's a taste of what that might look like. Instead of quitting your job overnight, you might start a small side project that lets you test a different kind of work. Instead of deciding that you have to know your forever path, you might commit to a 3-month exploration. Interview people in roles that interest you, take on a small volunteer role, try a tiny paid offer or a workshop on the side. Each of those actions is a low-risk way to gather information. This is where those 3 forms of leverage work together. Your experience helps you design better experiments. Your capital gives you something to bring into those experiments: skills, connections, know-how. And your urgency gives you the motivation to actually run them instead of endlessly thinking about them. The alternative is to let time pass while you stay where you are, hoping the feeling of misalignment will somehow disappear on its own. Usually it doesn't. It just gets more expensive emotionally. The longer you wait, the more you have to ignore yourself, and the more you might feel stuck or resentful. There's another important part of this conversation: compassion for the choices you made earlier in life. It's very easy, when you start to see that your current path doesn't fit, to look back and feel regret. Why did I choose this career? Why did I stay so long? Why didn't I listen to myself sooner? That self-attack can be paralyzing. Instead, I want to invite you to consider a different perspective. At every earlier stage of your life, you made the best decisions you could with the information, role models, and inner resources you had at the time. Those decisions got you here. They gave you the experience and capital you have now. They were not wrong. They were steps on the path. Seeing your earlier self with kindness is important because it frees you to move forward. If you spend all your energy blaming yourself for the past, you have less energy to design the future. Ikigai is not about judging your old choices. It's about asking, given where I am now and who I am now, what choices do I want to make next? So let's bring this down to something very practical you can reflect on after this video. I'm going to frame it as 3 questions that tap into the 3 forms of leverage we've been talking about. First, experience. Ask yourself, What have the last 10 or 20 years taught me about the conditions where I thrive and the conditions where I slowly shut down? Think of specific times when you felt deeply alive in your work or in your daily life, and times when you felt drained or numb. What was different? Was it the kind of tasks you were doing, the people you were with, the level of autonomy you had, the sense of purpose? Second, capital. Ask, what are the most valuable skills, relationships, and knowledge I've built that I could reuse or redeploy in a new way? Maybe you've become very good at explaining complex information. Maybe you've built trust with a certain kind of client or community. Maybe you know how a particular industry really works behind the scenes. Instead of seeing those things as chains keeping you stuck, can you see them as assets you could take with you into a more meaningful direction? Third, urgency. Ask, if I imagine myself 10 years from now, looking back at this moment, what would I regret more? Having tried some thoughtful experiments, even if they didn't all work, or having done nothing and kept everything exactly as it is? That question can cut through a lot of noise. It helps you connect with the part of you that already knows your time is precious. Take a moment after this video to jot down whatever comes up around those questions. You don't have to show it to anyone. It's just for you. The goal is to start seeing your current stage of life not as a trap, but as a powerful starting point. Because here's the truth. If you're feeling the pull toward a more meaningful, more aligned life, it means you have space to move. That inner restlessness is your system's way of nudging you. It's saying, you have more to give. You have more to experience. You're not done yet. In the rest of this course, we'll build on everything we've just talked about. We'll start using the Ikigai framework as a way to make sense of your experience and your capital. We'll explore the 4 circles: what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be rewarded for. And we'll see how they come together. In the next video, we'll go deeper into that Ikigai model itself. We'll look at what makes it different from the usual follow your passion or just be practical advice, and we'll set the stage for mapping your own life using that lens. For now, I want you to leave with this reframing. You are not behind. You are not late. You are at a point in your life where you have an extraordinary amount of experience, resources, and clarity available to you. The question is not, is it too late? The question is, how do I want to use what I've built from here on out? You have more leverage than you think, and we're going to use it.